welcome to this is chapter 9 is the respiratory system, and what we're planning to cover in this presentation, it's something about talking about the structure of the respiratory system, the function, and also how air is processed in the respiratory system. Hi! Now we're going to talk about upon inspiration, air needs to be warm, air needs to be filtered, air needs to be moisture. And the order in which we do all this process, it's the filtration comes first, and the filtration is done by special epithelium with cilia that we have inside the nasal cavity down to the trachea, and the moisture is done because inside our nose, because we do have capillary tissue that will exchange body temperature, and the moisture, it's a very similar process that is done also in the nasal cavity. So air needs to be filtered, moisture, and warm.
Okay, so what happens to the air once it's inspired into the body? We talked about that it needed to be processed, and we said that it needed to be moistened, it needed to be filtered, and it needed to be warmed. When you breathe the air back out, a lot of that same material actually happens in reverse. When the air moves out during expiration, it's cooled and loses moisture, so the body is able to retain that material for the next inspiration.
Let's talk about the structure of the respiratory system. We're going to go from the nasal cavity and down to the pharynx, down to the larynx, and very important, the level of the larynx. Remember, we have the epiglottis. It's a flap, it's a valve that will close, allowing enough food inside the respiratory system when we are eating or swelling, and down to then the trachea. And the trachea, it's around 13 centimeter long tube. Then we go down to the right and left bronchi, and from the bronchus, right or left bronchus, we're gonna go inside a set of bronchioles. These are getting smaller, 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 until we go to a dead end that is represented by the alveolus.
What is the function of the cilia in the respiratory tract?
The filtration is done by special cilia that we have inside the nasal cavity, and again also the mucus is very important because it's going to function like a glue to attach all this dust particle, and the cilia, with the help of the cilia, this dust particle, they're going to be again removed outside.
We start first at the nose. The nose contains two nasal cavities, which are narrow canals separated by one another by a septum, which is a separation made of bone and cartilage. The special ciliated cells in the upper nasal cavities react to small particles in the air that the brain, again, recognizes as an odor. So that's one of the other functions of the nasal cavity. Our tear glands actually empty into the nasal cavities, which is why crying produces a runny nose. The nose actually is related to the sinus cavities, and those of you with sinus headaches know that very well. The nose reacts to changes in those sinus cavities and produce mucus and pressure related to those pressure headaches. The nasal cavities then empty into what the area called the nasopharynx, which is the upper portion of the pharynx. The pharynx itself is a funnel-shaped passageway that connects the nasal and oral cavities to the larynx. This is an area, the pharynx is an area where air and food share a common passageway until they reach either the windpipe or the esophagus for air and food, respectively. Okay, so now we're tracing the air movement from the nasal passages through the pharynx. We've made our way into the larynx now. This is an area that's made up of what everyone knows as the Adam's apple. It contains the opening called the glottis, a flap of tissue that covers that opening called the epiglottis. It's also called the voice box because it houses the vocal cords. The vocal cords are mucosal folds supported by elastic ligaments, which are stretched across the glottis, that opening that we just talked about. When the air passes through the glottis, the vocal cords vibrate, producing sound. In men, the cords are longer and produce a deeper voice than in women. The difference in voice sounds are due to changing tension on those vocal cords. Kind of like if you stretch a rubber band, it makes a different sound if you pull it tight versus loose. Okay, now we make our way into the lungs. The lungs are paired, cone-shaped organs found in the thoracic, or otherwise known as the chest cavity. The right lung actually has 3 lobes, 3 portions. The left lung actually only has 2 because it needs to make space for the heart, which is nestled quite nicely on that side. The alveoli, as we spoke of, found at the end of the bronchioles. They're made up of a layer of epithelial tissue surrounded by blood capillaries. And as we saw in the other systems, the cardiovascular system, exchange of oxygen inside the tissues also takes place at the capillary level. Same here with the breathing system. So gas exchange occurs between air in the alveoli and blood in the capillaries at that level. Okay, now we make our way into the bronchial tree. The trachea actually divides into the right and left bronchi, which then splits into each the right and left lung. Those bronchi then further divide into the bronchioles. Still, this is all just a delivery system from air from the outside to get to the alveoli, which is the active part of the lung where the actual gas exchange takes place.
What is the function of oxygen in the respiratory system?
Okay, we understand that the reason for breathing, respiration is the complete process of supplying oxygen to body cells and the reverse process of ridding the body of carbon dioxide. All parts of breathing and respiration include breathing, which is the actual physical process, external respiration, which is the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the blood and the lungs, internal respiration, which is the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between the blood and body fluid, and then lastly, cellular respiration, which is where oxygen is used inside each cell, inside the mitochondria for the production of ATP.
Okay, so during inspiration, due to the nervous stimulation, signals from the brain and the nervous system to the diaphragm and the rib cage, the diaphragm lowers and the rib cage lifts up and out. During expiration, due to the lack of nervous stimulation, everything sort of relaxes. We have the diaphragm rising back to its normal position and the rib cage lowers.
How does the air have to be processed before your body can use it?
Okay. The answer to your question, Phil, is the air needs to be filtered, moist, and warm. And again, the filtration is done by special cilia that we have inside the nasal cavity. And again, also the mucus is very important because it's going to function like a glue to attach all this dust particle. And the cilia, with the help of the cilia, these dust particles, they're going to be, again, removed outside. I mean, and then also sometimes we're going to trigger the cough reflex or the sneeze reflex. Hi, we're going to talk about a summary. And the key point for the respiratory system, air is going to be first during inspiration, air is going to be breathed in. And how we breathe air in, remember we're talking about needs to be warm, needs to be filtered, and needs to be moist. So this is the air processing. Half the air is transported down to a conducting system and reaching the alveoli. Remember, the alveoli is representing the respiratory component where gas exchange occur. at the level of the alveoli, air is going to be oxygen is going to be transported inside the red blood cell, and through the red blood cell, then air, oxygen, and is going to be transported to the tissue. After that, I want to also mention another summary. Very important point is that you have to remember that when we breathe air in, is the diaphragm. There is a contraction. Usually, when we stop to breathe, the diaphragm will go back to the normal position. When we breathe in, the diaphragm will become flat, will contract. It's a muscle, so it will become flat, allowing the expansion of the lungs to be again expanding and increasing the amount of air that gets inside the lung. During expiration, we're going to see that the expiration is going to be a passive. The reason it's passive is because there is the recoil, the elasticity of the lung that is going to again come back to the normal position and squeeze air. It's like squeezing air from a balloon out, and that is expiration. So again, the third point is the inspiration, it's active; expiration, it's passive. And the last point is when we force breathing, for example during exercise, and we want more air inside our lung, we have to again use the intercostal muscle, the internal and the external intercostal muscle. And remember that the internal intercostal muscle are responsible of expiration, vice versa the external intercostal muscle, the external one, are responsible for inspiration. And that's it. That's the conclusion. I wish you luck, and bye bye.